Let us recap a little bit of what we had learned in the previous lectures. We started with a simple spin half system and how it orients itself when subjected to an external magnetic field B naught. We said that the wave function for such a case can be represented in a way where its complex coefficients could have the time dependence while we only probe the stationary states. And in this aspect, we were able to relate to another way of representing the wave function in form of a density matrix. Time evolution of the density matrix was also deciphered to be driven by the Liouville von Neumann equation, whose solution for a time independent Hamiltonian is given in this form. And we extended this further and said the solution can be represented as a series using the Baker-Campbell-Hausdorff formula as shown here, where each of the exponential operator e power a can be expressed in terms of a Taylor series, and one could arrive at this solution that is being provided by the BCH formula. And followed by this, we took a very simple single spin system, water, and we subjected it to a 90-degree perturbation pulse followed by acquisition. And we also understood how the density matrix could be represented in form of the IZ operator. And then when we did this, we were able to see the final outcome of this experiment is one where you are able to get the e power I capital omega I times t, which fishes out the frequency difference from that of the transmitter, this capital omega part, and therefore you will be able to get the chemical shift of the water protons. And we also applied this propagator for any type of a perturbation where you have an alpha type flip angle or omega t times evolution, and with different operators across I and IZ, how this gets expanded. And in this lecture, we will continue this further for a two-spin system which also has scalar coupling. So let's take a very simple example of an I and S spin system. Let's say you have a HA and HB, which are the only lone protons that couple with each other. From our knowledge, we already know each of them are going to be split into a doublet. The equilibrium density matrix given by, let's call it spins I and S. It's going to be given by omega I IZ plus omega S SZ. And the Hamiltonian is going to be given by, so I'm going to directly to the transformed Hamiltonian, is going to be given by capital omega I times IZ plus capital omega S times SZ plus 2 pi J IS, where JIS is the magnitude of scalar coupling, times I dot S. Let's still continue to operate in the weak coupling limit, where the magnitude of chemical shift difference between omega I and omega S is much greater than that of 2 pi J IS. So when you are operating in such a scenario, the operators here gets reduced to just IZ and SZ. So now let's start with the equilibrium density matrix and try to understand if we are doing a similar experiment where you have a 90-degree Y pulse and you have acquisition, what in addition to chemical shift ends up coming. So obviously you are going to end up getting omega I and omega S, but how does this get affected by scalar coupling is a question that we are trying to answer. So we can actually divide and rule, meaning that you can just take either one of the term and try to understand what happens. So I'm just going to end up taking the omega I term, which is going to be given by the operator IZ. When you apply a 90-degree Y pulse, this will end up being across the x-axis, which we have seen several times right now. Then comes our dilemma. You have a time evolution that has the Hamiltonian consisting of both chemical shift and the scalar coupling part. So now the question comes, which do you apply first? Do you first apply the chemical shift followed by scalar coupling, or scalar coupling followed by the chemical shift? The answer is pretty easy here, especially in this case, that our Hamiltonian only has terms IZ and IZSZ. So therefore, you have to calculate what is the commutator between IZ and IZSZ to understand which order you have to measure these. Meaning that, I'm sure you would remember from the basic lectures that the commutator, if 0, then it doesn't matter which order you measure it. So that's the same question we are asking here. What is the commutator between these two operators? So let us try to expand this. This is going to be IZ times SZ minus IZ times SZ times IZ. Of course, there has to be a function here. This is an important aspect you have to understand for coupled spins. Let's say you have A and B, two spins that are present. The operator I represents for spin A, operator S represents spin B, which is what we started with here. The important aspect of this is that whatever you apply the S operator with will not affect the A spin and vice versa, meaning that if you apply the I operator on B will not affect what happens. So let's take an example. Let's say we take IZ on alpha alpha, you're going to get half times alpha alpha. The answer will not change if you take IZ on alpha beta, so we are writing I comma S here, so that's going to remain half comma alpha beta. So the magnitude that you end up getting is independent of the state that the S spin is in. Similar arguments can be made of SZ as well, where it doesn't matter where the I spin will be, you will end up getting the similar numbers. So in order to understand this, we should understand how the operators are represented when you have two coupled spin systems, which we will see in a moment. But before going there, you are able to understand the influence of I and S are quite independent of each other, especially since they are only operating on their own spins, and therefore you can switch the order, meaning that if you have IZ-SZ, you can also write it as SZ-IZ in this case. So therefore what ends up happening, you can switch this and you'll immediately see this commutator goes to 0. Since this commutator goes to 0, you can apply chemical shift first followed by J coupling, or J coupling first followed by chemical shift. So why don't we do chemical shift? Because this is something that we have already seen in the previous lecture. So the chemical shift is going to be given by omega I times Iz. So what are you going to get? Ix cos of omega I times t plus Iy times sine of omega I times t. So this is the solution you get. So now that you have gotten this, the next step is to apply it with scalar coupling. So your density matrix now looks like Ix cos omega I t plus Iy sine capital omega I t. And now you have to apply it for a duration t, the operator 2 pi j Iz Sz. You're once again able to imagine there are two operators here. So we can just once again divide and conquer. We can just take the first one where only this the operator part is just the modulation part, amplitude modulation part. So therefore, we can write this as exp minus I 2 pi j Iz Sz times Ix exp plus 2 pi j Iz-Sz. So this is the same form that we have been seeing again and again. Exp minus IHT times the density matrix times the Exp plus IHT. And in this case, the Hamiltonian is going to be given only by the scalar coupling Hamiltonian. So let's write this in the BCH expansion. It's going to be given by Ix, of course, this is the first part that comes by itself, minus It. Instead of just writing the It part, I'm going to take I pi jt by 1 factorial. The 2 could also be taken here, but you will see soon why the 2 belongs within the commutator to Iz-Sz comma Ix plus I pi jt the whole square 2 factorial double commutator 2 Iz-Sz comma 2 Iz-Sz comma Ix minus the third term I pi jt the whole cube. We have to once again consider the terms that are present here for the sake that we just saw that I and S can be treated independently. Just for the sake of simplicity, you can take the 2 out and you can take the Sz out so that you can take these 2 out of this equation. You have a simple Iz comma Iy. So this is going to be plus Iy is the final commutator that you end up getting. This is going to be equal to Ix. You have a plus and minus, that's going to be minus, but I square is going to be minus 1. So therefore you get plus pi jt by 1 factorial times 2 Iy Sz. So now this commutator we just saw as 2 Iy Sz. Similarly, you have a 2 Sz on both of this, so therefore you're going to get a common 4 Sz square, and you're going to have a commutator, which of course there's an I also here, times Iz comma Iy. So this is going to be nothing but minus I ix. So you end up getting something like minus 4I square, which will be plus 4 Ix Sz square. So what is Sz square? So if you are able to recollect what is the matrix representation of Iz with h bar set to 1, you have 1 0 0 minus 1. And if you might remember, Iz square was equal to 1 over 4 times identity. So therefore, you are able to understand z square and 4 would cancel each other, finally just giving you Ix, right? So therefore, this entire commutator goes to Ix. So therefore, I can write this as Ix. You also have I square that ends up coming, so you will have a negative sign, pi j t square by 2 factorial times Ix. So far so good. Let's take a look at the third term and we will conclude right there. You are able to appreciate the second and the fourth term and now become similar. This is a repeated occurrence that you have seen in this propagator approach, where you are able to see that terms keep coming up. The first and the third term were same, you have Ix and Ix, and the second and the fourth term are one and the same. So therefore, what ends up happening here is that you just have to be careful with the sign. You're going to get an I out, so therefore there's going to be minus pi j t the whole cube by 3 factorial times 2 iy sz and so on. So if you club similar terms where you take ix out, you have 1 minus pi j t the whole square by 2 factorial plus pi j t the whole power 4 by 4 factorial. Do the next term, you'll be able to understand that, plus 2 iy sz times pi j t plus minus pi j t the whole cube by 3 factorial plus and so on. Immediately we recognize all that we have here is Ix of cos pi j t plus 2 iy as z of sin pi j t. Let me rewrite what I had. Ix on t with 2 pi j iz sz is what we have gotten here. Similarly, if you do iy and 2 pi j iz sz, I request you guys to do this. Iy cos of pi j t minus 2 ix sz sin pi j t. This is an important aspect that comes out when you had just an ix term. Due to the presence of a coupling term, you are able to realize you generate iy sz term. If you are thinking about chemical shift evolution from Ix, you just generated Ix and Iy. But on the other hand, when you just have Ix with the scalar coupling being present, Ix becomes Iy not just Iy itself. So this is an important observation one makes. This can also be thought through as counterclockwise rotation, where you have 3 axes that are present, where this is the 2Iz Sz axis, this is the Ix axis, 2Iy Sz axis. So basically, of course, you still have other dimensions that have been dumbed down, where the rotation is counterclockwise, where you end up going from Ix to plus 2Iy Sz. On the other hand, when you are looking at the Iy part, you have a similar operator where you have 2Iz Sz that provides the rotation, but on the other hand, you're going to have Iy and 2Ix Sz that is being present. So therefore, it still goes counterclockwise to give a 2 minus Ix Sz type of an operator here. Okay, so let's finish off the problem that we started with. The problem we had was a 2-spin system which couple with each other, and what we are able to see here is the final answer. If you are able to write it in its full glory, is going to look like this: Ix cos pi j t plus 2 Iy Sz sin pi j t sin omega I t. This is the Iy part which I am writing directly. Iy cos pi j t minus 2 Ix Sz sin pi j t. If you carefully do the product of this density matrix at 2 with that of the I plus operator, you would realize that the terms like IZ, IXSZ, IY and IYSZ will not be observable anymore because the trace will be equal to 0. On the other hand, you will be able to see that this is what we end up observing, similar to the case that we had before, where Ix cos omega it plus Iy sin omega it gave you exp I omega it. Here you're going to have in addition, meaning that you also have a scalar coupling that ends up coming. What do we mean by that? You have something like a cos alpha, cos beta type term. So therefore cos alpha, cos beta is going to be given by 1 over 2 cos of alpha beta, alpha plus beta plus cos of alpha minus beta. And we just said alpha is omega I t and beta is pi j t. So therefore, immediately you are able to understand omega I plus pi j times t, omega I minus pi j times t comes up. Unlike the previous situation where we had to do Fourier transform and all that to understand e power I omega t gives you a resonance at plus omega, here instead of doing all that process, you are able to see that you are going to get a resonance at omega I plus pi j and omega I minus pi j. Of course, remember the difference that would come from this is that you also have a factoring that goes as 0.5, which is why when you have a singlet that comes as at an intensity 1, if the same thing splits as 2, you're going to have a 1:1, which reduces the intensity by half. This is one of the questions that was raised earlier, but now what we are able to see, using the same density matrix formalism, you are able to get omega I with a doublet, and similarly you solve it for omega s, you're going to get a doublet there as well, where the splitting is going to be 2 pi j. So far what we have done is to take the density matrix formalism in order to understand how scalar coupling ends up working. Now let's spend a few moments in order to understand how the matrix representations look for a two spin half coupled system. So I'm going to be using two different colors to represent. The alpha beta for the I spin is in red and the alpha beta for the S spin is in blue. So you have the same representations for an alpha and beta state. But remember, you are going to go from a two-state alpha beta system to something like an alpha alpha, alpha beta, beta alpha and beta beta type system. So how do we go from here to such a system is what we will be seeing in the remaining part of this lecture. In order to go from simple two isolated spin half systems to two coupled spin half systems, all that you have to do is to take the direct product between these states. So what is this direct product? This is one where you start from 1, 0. You have a 2 by 1 matrix and you have a 2 by 1 matrix. In a general matrix multiplication term, this cannot be multiplied. But on the other hand, when you are trying to do a direct product, you end up expanding the set. So you're going to get something like a 4 by 1. So how do you end up doing this? Take the first term, multiply with each one of them. So 1 times 1 is 1, 1 times 0 is 0. Then you take the second term, multiply by each one of them. 0 times 1 is 0, 0 times 0 is 0. So alpha state now will be represented as 1, 0, 0, 0. So similarly, let's say we are doing the alpha beta state, that is going to be 1, 0, direct product 0, 1. This is going to be equal to 1 times 0 is 0, 1 times 1 is 1, 0 times 0 is 0. Similarly, if you are able to do the beta alpha state, you are going to get 0, 0, 1, 0. And finally, the beta beta state is going to be 0, 0, 0, 1. So what you have seen is that from a simple 2 by 1 matrices, you are going to a 4 by 1 type of a vector system. So you're expanding the set. So if this is how the states look, let's also ask a question, how would the operators look? So let me write the operator representation for IZ. This is what is given, and from here on I'm going to definitely assume H cross is equal to 1, so I'm just going to write it this way. And similarly, SZ will also be represented the same way because all these are spin half systems. So now the question is, how is an operator 2IZSZ represented? 2IZSZ will be equal to 1 over 2 times 1, 0, 0 minus 1 direct product 1, 0, 0 minus 1. So now this will be equal to, remember, you are starting with a 2 by 2 matrix and a 2 by 2 matrix. Therefore, you are going to end up with a 4 by 4 matrix. So I'm going to carefully write this 1 over 2. Please follow the order in which I'm going to be doing this. I'm going to take the first element and multiply with the entire matrix. So it's going to be 1, 0, 0, minus 1. This is very different from the matrix multiplication that you have learned. And the next one is a 0 term multiplied with this entire matrix. So you're going to get 0, 0, 0, 0. Similarly, if you take this term with all of them, you're going to get a 0, 0, 0, 0. And finally, you take a minus 1 with that of a minus 1, you're going to get minus 1, 0, 0, 1. So this is how the 2IZ operator is represented. So similarly, we can ask, how is the IZ operator represented? Because you have a 2 by 2 matrix, the moment you have one 4 by 4 matrix, everybody has to be expressed as a 4 by 4 matrix. So in this case, you are going to be taking a direct product of the identity with the S operator. So this is going to be 1 half 1 0 0 minus 1 direct product 1 0 0 1. This is the identity. So therefore, the IZ operator for a 2-spin system is going to be represented as 1 0 0 1 0 0 0 0 minus 1 0 minus 1. So you are able to understand here that the minus 1s for 2IZ comes in the middle, while that for the IZ comes little in the only the last 2 rows. So similarly, if you want to take the SZ operator, that's going to be given by EI times SZ. That's going to be equal to 1 half 1 0 0 1 direct product 1 0 0 minus 1. So this is going to be equal to 1 over 2 1 0 0 minus 1 0 0 0 0 1 0 0 minus 1. Here you are able to see that the minus 1 and plus 1 alternates, while here it is grouped and here it's in some other place. So similarly, I encourage you guys to determine how does all the remaining operators look. What do I mean by remaining? The identity will be a 4 by 4 identity. You can write IX, IY, IZ we just wrote, SX, SY, SZ, and it doesn't stop here. And there are also going to be additional terms which goes to IX, SX, to IX, SY, to IX, SZ. Similarly, we can write to IY, SX, to IY, SY, to IY, SZ, to IZ, SX, to IZ, SY, to IZ, SC. We have just seen in this lecture how to represent 2 IZSZ and IX and SX. So therefore, in total you have 9 here, 10 plus 6, you have 16 operators. If you remember, in the case of a single spin-off system, you had 4 operators. So as you keep increasing the size, the number of operators that define the system also increases, which helps you define the density matrix. I hope this lecture has helped you understand how to go from a single spin-half system to coupled spin-half system, and how J coupling manifests itself in a way where you will be able to observe it. Similar to the table that we had created earlier, I strongly recommend you to do as a homework, where you start from every possible state I, and using the 2 pi j t IZSZ operator, what would be the final state that is present. So remember, you have 16 operators here. For each of the 16 operators, you could apply the propagator, apply the BCH formula to list each one of them. I just listed all the 16 operators. So try to do this as a homework and come back and tell me what will be the answer when you start from a given state, and how does scalar coupling affect it.